The last conversation I ever had with my mother ended with 6 words that didn't make sense to me at the time. Be careful who you call family. She said it as she smoothed out the blanket on her hospital bed, her hands trembling from the chemo, her voice soft but sharp. I thought it was the medication talking, the fatigue, the fear. I never imagined she was warning me. My name is Lisa, and 1 week ago, I found out my brother sold the house I inherited from our mother, without telling me. We'd grown up in that house, a small 2-story with peeling blue shutters, an old oak tree out front, and the creaky porch swing where Mom used to read to us every Sunday. After our dad left when I was 8, that house became her world, and when she passed away last month, I thought she had passed that world on to me. Turns out I was wrong. Or so I thought. It started with a phone call. Hi, this is Mark Cunningham from Red Elm Realty. Just confirming you've vacated the property at 318 West Hollow Drive. The buyers will be moving in next week. I blinked, nearly dropping my coffee. Excuse me? I haven't sold anything. A pause on the other end. You're Lisa Wexler, correct? Yes. Another pause. I have a signed agreement from a Mr. Brian Wexler. He indicated he was the sole inheritor. My stomach dropped. Brian is my brother. We both inherited that house. More silence. Then a rushed, you may want to speak with your attorney. I hung up and immediately called Brian. It went to voicemail. I didn't leave a message. I got in my car and drove to his apartment instead. He answered the door like he'd been expecting me, wearing that smug half-smile he's had since we were kids. You sold Mom's house? I demanded, my voice already shaking. He leaned against the doorframe. I thought you'd be grateful. You couldn't keep up with the maintenance anyway. You didn't even tell me. He shrugged. You were always more attached to her memory than the house. I needed the money. I deserve it more. Those words, I deserve it more. I couldn't even speak. I turned and left, hands clenched into fists. By the time I got home, I was already dialing the number of Mom's lawyer, Grace Lynn, the woman who had handled Mom's will. I hadn't read it in detail. Mom had passed barely 2 weeks earlier. Everything was still a blur of flowers, condolences, casseroles, and aching silence. But now I needed answers. Grace met me the next morning in her downtown office. She was calm, collected, the kind of lawyer who always wore soft colors and had a way of delivering brutal truths like gentle weather. I'm sorry, Lisa. I thought your brother would at least wait until probate was finalized. He didn't wait. He already sold it. She raised an eyebrow. That's interesting. I blinked. What? Grace reached for the thick envelope labeled Last Will and Testament, Margaret Wexler. Your mother included a clause in the fine print. It wasn't highlighted because I assumed it would never become relevant. She flipped a few pages and pointed to a paragraph I'd completely overlooked the day of the reading. The property located at 318 West Hollow Drive is to be inherited by both children, Lisa and Brian Wexler. However, under no circumstances may the house be sold without the unanimous written consent of both parties. Any attempt to sell the property without such consent will render the transaction void. I stared at it, barely breathing. He sold it anyway, I whispered. Grace leaned back, hands folded. Then the sale is invalid, and if the buyer wasn't made aware of this clause, it may count as misrepresentation or even fraud. A cold satisfaction began to creep in beneath the hurt. So I can get it back? Grace nodded. And if I were your brother, I'd be very worried. He forgot to read the fine print. The gravel crunched under my tires as I pulled into the driveway of the only place that had ever felt like home. The for sale sign was still staked in the front lawn, now branded with a red sold sticker. And in front of the porch stood a moving truck, half unloaded. Men carried furniture into the house like they owned the place. They didn't. Not yet. I parked crookedly, slammed my car door, and marched up the drive. My heartbeat was thudding in my ears. And then I saw him. The man giving orders to the movers wore a navy blazer and polished shoes that didn't belong in a place like this. His head turned as I approached, and the moment our eyes met, the world seemed to tilt slightly. Jason Monroe. Of all the people who could have bought the house, it had to be my ex. Lisa? He said, surprise clear on his face. What are you doing here? I could ask you the same thing, I shot back. He took a few steps forward, brow furrowing. I bought this house. Your brother sold it to me 2 weeks ago. I had no idea. This house isn't his to sell, I cut in. I own half of it. The color drained from his face. You're kidding. I wish I was. We stared at each other in a silence thick with tension. It had been 4 years since we'd last spoken, since our breakup ended with more silence than closure. Jason had been my first love, and now he was the man unloading boxes into my childhood home. You need to stop the movers, I said. He hesitated, then turned and barked, hold everything. The workers paused, arms full of boxes. I could feel my pulse calming slightly, the only thing steady in a whirlwind of betrayal, anger, and disbelief. Lisa, Jason said more gently, your brother assured me everything was legal. He signed the deed, showed me the probate documents. He forged this sale, I snapped. The will specifically says both heirs have to consent in writing. He never even asked me. That signature on the sale agreement? It's just his. Jason ran a hand through his hair. Then the sale's not valid. Correct. He looked away, embarrassed. I didn't know. I wouldn't have if I'd known. I crossed my arms, trying to contain the emotions bubbling up inside me. I don't care about your buyer's remorse. I care that Brian tried to erase me from my own inheritance. Jason gestured toward the porch. Can we talk inside? I hesitated. The porch swing was still there. So was the wind chime Mom had bought at the flea market when we were kids. This was still my house. At least half of it. Fine, I said, and walked up the steps first. The house smelled like lemon cleaner and sawdust. Boxes lined the hallway, but much of the place was still untouched. Mom's floral wallpaper. Her antique clock ticking in the corner. Her presence clung to the walls like perfume. Jason sat down at the kitchen table and gestured for me to join him. I did, reluctantly. I get why you're angry, he said. And you're right to be. But I promise I acted in good faith. I'm not blaming you, I replied. Not entirely. But Brian? He knew exactly what he was doing. Jason frowned. He said, a lot of things, actually. Said you didn't want the house. That you'd moved on. That you couldn't afford the upkeep. I scoffed. Typical. He also said you never came to visit Mom when she got sick. That you were too busy. My jaw clenched. I was with her every Thursday night for the last year of her life. I cooked her meals and helped her bathe when she couldn't stand. He showed up maybe twice. And then suddenly, when she's gone, he wants to play devoted son and claim the house? Jason looked down. Then I got played. He paused. There's something else. I didn't think much of it at the time, but he was pushing me to close fast. He said he was under financial pressure, that the funds were already committed to a new business venture. I narrowed my eyes. That sounds exactly like Brian. Did he say what the venture was? Number. But he seemed nervous, jittery. He didn't even want to hire a lawyer, just used a friend to draw up the contract. I should have seen it. I pulled out my phone and showed Jason a photo Grace had texted me earlier. The clause in the will. Jason studied it, then blew out a breath. Well, that's clear. Without your signature, this sale is worthless. Then do me a favor, I said, standing. Put the boxes back in the truck. Jason looked me in the eyes. I'll call my attorney. You'll hear from me soon. I paused at the door, looking back. Jason, why this house? Why now? He hesitated. Because it felt like a place I used to know. And maybe I thought, if I came back, I'd find something I lost. I didn't respond. I walked out the door, heart pounding, I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Mom's house. My house being emptied box by box. I saw Jason's confused face, Brian's smugness, the betrayal coiled around everything like smoke. By morning, my phone was filled with messages from Grace, my lawyer. She had started the process of filing a legal injunction to halt the sale, and she sounded confident. But I wasn't. Because something about Brian's actions, about what Jason had said, wasn't just careless or selfish. It felt desperate. At noon, I drove to Brian's place again. This time, he didn't ignore the doorbell. He opened the door in sweatpants and a faded hoodie, his hair sticking out like he hadn't slept either. "You again," he muttered. "Yes, again. I don't have time for this, Lisa." "Make time." He sighed, stepped aside, and let me in. His apartment was a mess. Empty pizza boxes, half-drunk energy drinks, bills scattered across the table like confetti after a sad party. I picked one up. Overdue. 3 months. I tossed it back down. "This what Mom's house was for? To cover your mess?" "You think you know everything," he said, voice rising. "I know enough. You forged a sale. You lied to Jason. You tried to cut me out of my own inheritance. And for what?" He rubbed his face and dropped into a chair. "You think this is just about money?" His voice was low, bitter. "You have no idea what's really going on." "Then explain it to me." He didn't speak for a long moment. Then, "The business. It's going under." I blinked. "What business?" He looked up at me, eyes tired. "The investment group I started last year, with Carter and Malik." I vaguely remembered him bragging about it at Thanksgiving. Something about flipping commercial properties, diversifying portfolios. He used buzzwords like armor to hide how unstable his life was. "It's collapsing," he said. "We made some bad calls. There's an investigation now. I needed clean capital, something to buy us time." "So you sold Mom's house, my house, without telling me? To cover up fraud?" He stood abruptly. "It wasn't fraud when I made the deal. It just turned into something bigger." I stared at him. "And you didn't think to call me? Ask for help? Mom would have—" "Mom's gone," he shouted, fists clenched. "And you, Miss Perfect Daughter, you always had everything. Her affection, her approval, now the house. And what did I get? A pile of debt and judgment." I took a step back. "She tried with you, Brian. You pushed her away." He shook his head, eyes glassy. "You don't know the pressure I'm under. Carter wants his money back. If I don't find $250,000 by the end of the month, I lose everything. And you thought stealing from your sister would solve it?" He laughed bitterly. "Don't act like you care about the house. You've got your fancy job, your downtown apartment, your weekends in Napa. I'm the one drowning." My voice dropped to a whisper. "You made your bed. You don't get to steal from the dead to fix your mistakes." He looked at me, something flickering in his expression. Shame, maybe. Or maybe just panic. "You need to undo the sale," I said. "Tell Jason the truth. Give the money back." "I can't," he muttered. "It's gone." "Gone?" He nodded. "Transferred. Wired to a holding account under Malik's name. He said he'd multiply it in a week. Now he's ghosting me." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You gave our mother's house to a man who's now disappeared with the money?" Brian sat back down, head in his hands. "I was trying to save everything. I didn't think—" "No, you didn't." My phone buzzed. A message from Grace. "Judge granted the injunction. The sale is frozen until further notice. Please come by the office as soon as possible. We need to talk." I looked back at Brian. "This isn't over. The house is still mine. And now, you may be facing more than just bankruptcy." I turned to leave, but paused at the door. "One more thing. Did Mom know? About any of this before she died?" He didn't answer right away. But then, just as I turned the knob, he whispered, "She found something. A document. A letter." I don't know what it said. She locked it away before I could read it. Where? In the house. I left without another word. Grace's office was buzzing with quiet intensity when I arrived. Paralegals murmured down the hall, and phones rang in muted tones, like everyone was just one step ahead of something big. Grace waved me into her office and shut the door behind me. The injunction's in place, she said. That house can't legally change hands now. But Lisa, there's something else we need to talk about. She slid a stack of papers across her desk. Property records, probate filings, digital logs. I dug a little deeper into Brian's activities, she continued, and I found something odd. He filed a power of attorney form 3 weeks before your mother passed. My heart sank. A power of attorney? She was barely coherent by then. That's exactly the problem. Her signature on this form? It's almost perfect. Too perfect. You think he forged it? I think it's highly suspicious, she said. And if he used this document to push through financial decisions in her final days, including the sale of the house, that could be criminal. The rage I had been trying to suppress roared back to life. Do we have proof? Not yet, Grace admitted. But there's one more thing. When your mother was admitted to the hospice center, the intake nurse logged that she brought a small metal box with her. It was listed in the personal belongings report. But when I requested a copy of the final inventory, it was missing. Grace nodded. Vanished. No explanation. I stared at her, pulse spiking. Do you think that box is still in the house? If Brian didn't know about it or couldn't access it in time, it might be. We left her office 20 minutes later and drove to the house. Jason met us there, waiting on the porch with his phone in hand. Movers haven't been back, he said. Everything's quiet. Good, I replied. Let's keep it that way. The three of us walked through the familiar hallways of my childhood, stopping in the sunroom, the place Mom had always treated like her sanctuary. I could still picture her sitting in that faded armchair with her tea and crossword puzzle, the afternoon light dancing through the sheer curtains. Check the desk, Grace said. I moved to the old wooden secretary desk Mom loved. I'd gone through it after she died, but never with the intent to search. Only to remember. But now I tugged at the bottom drawers with fresh eyes. That's when I felt it. The second drawer stuck halfway, just like it always did. But this time, when I reached behind it, I felt something hard lodged against the back. Jason helped me carefully lift the drawer out, revealing a small panel. It wasn't screwed down, just wedged in place. We pried it free. Behind it, nestled in a hollow compartment, was a small black metal box, dusty but intact. No key? Grace asked. No, I said, turning it over. It's not locked. I lifted the lid. Inside were neatly folded documents, USB drives, and an old cell phone. Jason let out a low whistle. Well, someone didn't want this found easily. I pulled out the documents first. Bank statements, wire transfers, names I didn't recognize. Carter Fields, Malik Idris, and Brian's, again and again. His name attached to unapproved transactions pulled from Mom's accounts. She was tracking everything, I whispered. She knew he was using her money. Grace leaned in, scanning the documents. And it looks like he used one of your mother's joint accounts to funnel money into an offshore LLC, registered in Brian's name. This wasn't just an emotional betrayal, it's financial fraud. Jason picked up the old cell phone and powered it on. Surprisingly, it still worked. There's a voicemail, he said, from 3 days before she passed. We listened. Lisa, if you ever find this, I hope you'll forgive me. I wanted to believe your brother would do the right thing, but I was wrong. I tried to protect you, to protect what matters, but I think time's running out. Don't trust what they tell you. Follow the money, and whatever you do, don't let them sell this house. My breath caught. She hadn't written a letter. She hadn't sent me instructions, but she had tried to warn me. She just hadn't lived long enough to make sure I heard it. Grace picked up one of the USB drives and slid it into her laptop. "What's on there?" I asked. Her brow furrowed as she scrolled. Holy hell. These are recordings. Phone calls. Between Brian and someone named Malik. He was trying to get the house appraised in secret. Planning to sell it weeks before your mother even passed. My knees felt weak. Jason steadied me. "She knew," I whispered. "She knew all along. And now, I had proof. Lisa, your brother's going to jail. But if he realizes we found this box, he may try to destroy everything. We need to act. Tonight," Grace said, her voice low and urgent. We stood in my mother's sunroom, the secret metal box open in front of us. Jason looked between us, tension rising in his shoulders. "You really think he'd go that far?" he asked. Grace didn't hesitate. "He's already forged signatures, lied in legal filings, and used estate assets to fund a fake business. If he knows we have the documents and recordings, he won't just sit back and wait." I looked down at the USB still plugged into Grace's laptop. The folder labeled Calls, Malik and Brian, was full. At least a dozen audio files, all time-stamped. We'd only listened to one. It had been enough to make my stomach turn. We pushed the sale before probate finalizes. Her daughter's distracted with work. I'll handle the paperwork. No one's going to notice a missing signature. Not if we move fast. And another. Once the funds hit the holding account, we're in the clear. Just make sure she doesn't find the safe. Mom kept everything. I closed my eyes. I could hear her voice again. Mom. Fragile but sharp, speaking into that old voicemail. "Don't trust what they tell you. Don't let them sell this house." Too late, but not beyond repair. Grace snapped her laptop shut. "We need to secure everything. I'll take the documents and USBs back to my office and make digital copies immediately. But Lisa, be prepared. If he finds out we're building a case, he may panic. And cornered people do dangerous things." Just as she said it, headlights flooded the front window. A car door slammed. Then another. Footsteps on gravel. Jason moved to the curtain and peeked outside. "It's Brian," he said, "and he's not alone." My breath hitched. "Who's with him?" Jason squinted. "I think it's Carter. From the documents, Grace swore under her breath and grabbed the metal box. You need to stall them," she said, already moving toward the back door. "I'll leave through the garden and head to my car. Keep them talking. 5 minutes, no more. I'll text you when I'm safe." Jason and I nodded, and she disappeared through the back. Then the front door opened without knocking. Brian strode in like he still owned the place, Carter close behind. Carter was older, leaner, with sharp eyes and an expensive watch that screamed, "Shady money." He didn't smile. Brian saw me and didn't bother hiding his anger. "You've been snooping," he snapped. "You had no right." "Funny," I replied, standing tall. "That's exactly what I was about to say to you." He stepped closer. "Where is it?" "Where's what?" I said innocently. Brian's jaw clenched. "The safe, the files, whatever she left. Don't play dumb." Carter chimed in. "You're interfering with an active business transaction, Ms. Wexler. That's grounds for legal action." I laughed once. Cold, sharp. "You're talking to the actual legal heir of this house. You don't scare me." Jason stepped forward then, shielding me slightly. "You should go." Carter ignored him. "Look, Lisa, we can settle this. Quietly. Brian told me you didn't care about the house. That it was sentimental, sure, but not worth this kind of drama. We can still cut a deal." "Oh, I'm sure you'd love that," I said. "But I've seen the wire transfers, the off-book accounts, the voice recordings." That stopped him cold. Brian's eyes widened. "You, what?" "I know everything, and so does my lawyer. She's on her way to the district attorney right now." For the first time, Brian looked genuinely scared. "You don't understand what you're doing." "No," I said calmly. "I understand exactly. You stole from Mom. You tried to erase me. You committed fraud. And now, you're going to answer for it. Carter grabbed Brian's arm. We need to go, now. But, now, Carter hissed. They turned to leave, but not before Brian looked back at me with a strange mix of anger and something that almost looked like regret. You could have just let it go, he said softly. You could have just asked for help, I replied. The door slammed behind them. A moment later, my phone buzzed. Grace. Safe, en route to DA. You did good. Jason let out a breath. Think they'll come back? I shook my head. Number not with what we have. We locked the door, and I sat down on the same sunroom chair Mom used to love. The house felt different now. Less haunted. More mine. Jason sat beside me. You okay? I looked at him. I will be, but there's one more thing I need to do. The call came at 8:03 a.m., just as I was pouring my second cup of coffee. Lisa, this is District Attorney Monica Reyes. We've issued the warrants. Brian and Carter will be picked up today. I stood frozen in my kitchen, heart pounding. That's good, I said, exhaling slowly. Thank you. There's more, she added. We recovered additional evidence from Carter's office. You'll want to come down and see it. There's a deeper layer to this. An hour later, I was seated across from her in a small, windowless room at the DA's office. Monica slid a thick manila folder toward me. These documents were hidden in a locked cabinet. Carter had gone to great lengths to cover his tracks. Offshore transfers, real estate fraud, false contracts under multiple shell companies. But this, she tapped the folder. This one ties everything back to your mother's estate. I opened it and stared. There, in black and white, was a contract, drawn up 2 months before my mother's death, transferring all estate assets to a company called Hollow Pines Holdings. I've never heard of this company, I said. Monica nodded. It's fake. Set up by Carter and Brian. But here's the problem. This contract is dated, signed, and notarized, and it supersedes the will, on the surface at least. But it's a forgery. We believe so. The notary listed on the document died 3 years ago. My stomach turned. They forged an entire contract to override the will, I whispered. Monica closed the folder. Your mother must have suspected this. That's likely why she documented everything, why she hid the files in the desk. And the voicemail, the recordings, I added. She was trying to leave breadcrumbs. And you followed them, she said, offering a small, genuine smile. You did what she hoped someone would do. I left the office with the folder tucked tightly under my arm, walking through downtown like I was floating. Everything felt both surreal and vividly real, like the past few weeks had cracked something wide open, not just in my family, but in me. That afternoon, I returned to the house. My house. Grace had already filed the paperwork to legally reinstate the title in my name. The judge had ruled the sale to Jason null and void. Jason, graciously, had withdrawn with no hard feelings, and even offered to help with repairs if I chose to stay. The sun filtered into the sunroom, highlighting the dust still suspended in the air. I walked to the secretary desk, now empty, and opened the drawer one last time. It was strange how the house still smelled like Mom, a mix of lavender, old books, and lemon polish. She hadn't just left behind memories. She'd left behind a trail of truth. Quiet, but powerful. I heard a knock at the door. When I opened it, Riley stood there, Brian's ex-girlfriend. We hadn't spoken in years. I heard what happened, she said, eyes wide. Brian called me last night. He sounded broken. He has every reason to be, I said. She hesitated. I know it's not my place, but I always thought you should have gotten the house. Your mom trusted you. Everyone knew that. I nodded slowly. Thank you. I also came to tell you, Brian's going to take a plea deal. He's cooperating with the investigation into Carter's network. Apparently, Carter's been laundering money for years using fake real estate deals like yours. So it hadn't just been about the house. It had never just been about the house. After Riley left, I walked through every room. The old wooden staircase still creaked. The guest room still had the faded quilt Mom made the year after Dad left. And in the upstairs closet, I found a box labeled in her handwriting, Lisa, for later. Inside were photos. Me and her, me and Brian as kids, and one photo of the three of us together, smiling, long before the lies. A sticky note was tucked between the pages. If you're reading this, it means you stayed. Thank you for holding on to what matters. P.S. Even broken things can be beautiful again. I sat on the floor and cried. Not from grief or anger, but from release. The house was no longer a battleground. It was a beginning. 3 months later, after the final court ruling, the estate was settled. Carter was indicted on federal charges. Brian accepted his sentence. 18 months in state prison with a restitution agreement. He didn't fight it. We spoke once before he turned himself in. I don't expect you to forgive me, he said, voice shaking. But I'm sorry. I'm not ready to forgive, I replied. But I hope you become someone who deserves it. He nodded and walked away. Jason came by a few weeks later with fresh flowers and a coffee from my favorite cafe. You really staying here? He asked. Yeah, I said. I think Mom wanted this place to feel like home again. I owe her that much. He looked around, hands in his pockets. You're stronger than you used to be. No, I said softly. I'm just done being quiet.